let's get into getting the quiz part 2, or the next stage in terms of difficulty. Up and running. Right, so let's get a link to a style sheet. That body, and in here, okay, so we're going to do a div class for our form, and in our div class we're going to have an empty h1, which is what we're going to put our info into. So basically what I want to be able to do is go, right, load a question. So ID, I'll call it question, that makes sense to me. Then we'll cover doing the radio buttons and what have you. And we'll need a button, of course. Button. Right, and it will be called check. Right. And then under the button, what I'm going to do is I'll put, I don't know, an H2, I guess. And I am going to give it an ID of, we'll call it result. And then in the check, I guess we need to say on click. On click equals, call it check. Check function. Right. Okay. Hopefully this plays nice this time, and so when I check this preview doesn't keep crashing, because it was crashing last time I was playing it. Alright, cool. So we've got something blank there. Check should try and run a function, but there's nothing really there, so that's all good. Let's put some stuff on the style sheet, shall we? And then we'll kind of go from there. Background color. That's grey. Font. Dash family equals. Because you just know I have to. Sorry, I've got a thing for Central Gothic. Font dash size. We'll just give it something quite large. Yep, we got that. Okay, I can say dot for. Actually, let's go body display grids. Align content center. Item center. That's a cheaper one. You know what I'm going to do? Dot form. Align self center. Justify self. What are those ones? Justify self center. Oh, ayo. No, I don't do that. All right, I will come back to that in a minute. Anyway, it's not that important. Oh, it's got lots of rubbish in there. That one there. Did I put an S in front of it? Ah, goof. Right, there we go. Well, there's that one fixed. Okay, so we've got a button, we've got our heading, we've got a H1, and we've got there. So we'll put in some radio buttons. It's not even that late. I should be yawning. Right, okay. Right, so a radio is an input. Right. And an input has a label. And I can say, here is a question. Obviously, I'm going to change this. So you'd see something like this. Here's a question. Oh, right. Here is a question. Right. So this, we don't want it to be like this. We want it to be a checkbox. So to do that, we would normally say type equals radio. Now it's one of these ones. You click it and you're like, ah, that's the one I chose. And then you'd hit check. So in terms of this here, sorry, I just thought I saw something. Anyway, that's all good. Like there is more we need to do with that. So obviously I need an ID for this. And it's going to be my option, I guess. And it's going to be my 0th in the list, if you will. So it's option 0. Now my label, I want that to dynamically update. So in here, I would effectively be putting a P tag with an ID and O text, O for option, text 0. Oh, slow that way down a wee bit. Okay. Now, I would like to. Why is it on another line? Oh, that's probably the P tag, I'm guessing. Did I move the break there? No? Weird. Right. But I would like to be able to click on the text to get that to do that. So to do this, we actually take the label and we wrap it right around the input. And so when I refresh this, now I should be able to click here and it fills the label in. I will tell ptext to display inline block. There we go. Now display in line with things. Right, and I guess I'll put a margin of 10 pixels. Just because personal space. Right. Then I want to say text align center just because that button's annoying me. There we go. I can bear with that. I can live with that now. So let's click at that. Okay, so we've got this. So let's go back and let's say if we had a couple questions because we're going to have 3 options. Let's say. So let's refresh this. I want to be able to go click that one and then go, actually no, I think it's that one, and not have. I want to be like, no, that should unclick and only allow one to be clicked in, not all 3 of them. Be like, the answer is going to be one of them. So to do that, we need to give it a name, and all the names need to be the same. So name, and I'm going to call this choose, I guess. Right. Put it in the same place. If we get the same layout, it makes things less confusing. Right. Should put P in the next one down. Alrighty. And I think we'll just put the label close like this. Okay. So now when I refresh this, go question, and I click this one. So that fixes that part there. So that's cool. There's several things obviously we need to kind of go through. Now, one of the things is you cannot have the same ID in there more than once. It's just the way that IDs are formatted, so that way when you use it in JavaScript, like when you use it, it'll basically just recognize one, particularly in JavaScript. So the reason why I wanted to have this as a 0, 1, 2, because I actually wanted to go through like my options. So it's options 0, 1, 2. Now, the other thing is, when I click this, what is being actually selected as a value? The text here? No, it's just a label. It's just whatever label I put in there. I actually need to say what the value is that I'm putting in there. Now, if it's just two options, I could put yes, no. If it was like state your, choose what gender you are out of the 172 options that apparently are, then you would say like, I am male, female, helicopter. Because I'm pretty sure that's the only genders there are. So in terms of this, we need to have a value that we're going to choose. Well, that's going to be associated with whatever you click. So I'm going to say value 0, because I'm just going to keep the numbers with the options. It's just something to say, okay, well, if you selected value 0 and the answer for this question should have been the second question, so it should have been value 1. Now, the reason why I'm not giving anything as a, the answer is zombie pies. That's what people are loving. A lot of zombie pies, or whatever the option's going to be written as the text. So like that, saying like, state your gender as the question, and then the options are male, female, and trans. Then effectively it should just go, like the value should just be male, female, confused. So in terms of this, but because we are going to have a dynamic list, so basically we're going to have a bunch of potential questions with a bunch of potential options to choose between, I can't really have the options pre-done. And do I really need to be bothered pushing in the values from the questions when I can just have a placeholder of this and then essentially just go, I'm only ever going to have 3 options for however many questions I do. If you want to have a random amount of questions, it adds another layer of just like, that's just going to make it a little bit trickier. So keep things simple, just do it like that. Right. So that's our setup. We actually don't need the word question in here, because that's just a placeholder, so we'll get rid of that. Right, so that's what we've got there. Exciting stuff. Styling wise, you can style these buttons, these little dots, but by golly, they don't make it easy. So just bank on it looking the way it's going to look. You can style the text. You can style a button much easier than you can, but these things here, if you want to style it, you honestly need to turn the display style off and then position absolute thing. It's just not worth the hassle, really. All right, so let's get into our code for the radio option. So I had a function which was called check please. So let's just, before we get carried away, actually just check it works. Console.log the word hello world, because that was, it's the classic. Right, so if I do this and I refresh and I go check hello world, okay, so that's running. Great. So we know that's good. What I want to do is I want to have a list of questions. So I'm going to call it questions. Always an S when you're doing pluralize your arrays, because effectively arrays should have more than one thing in it. Otherwise, you might as well use a variable. So in here, I'm going to store a bunch of options. So how do you just distract zombie? I'll just keep the questions kind of relatively straightforward. Now you format and how you write these out totally like however you want them, but essentially it's going to be your bracket, your text, obviously, because if you want it to be text, it's going to be this, because if there was no text, every word should be a variable, but then there should be pluses in between, then a comma between each option. I've just spread it out like this, just so it's a little bit cleaner and easier to read, plus, because when I want to zoom things in, it's just, you can see what you're looking at. Right, how does a zombie, how do you kill a zombie? Yes, how do you hide from a zombie? How do you hide from zombie? Was that the questions I had? I think those are the questions I kind of pre-figured out. Kill, hide, and get away from. Right. Okay, so we've got our questions. So before we start getting complicated, I want to say, right, when I load the page, so basically when I load this web page we've written, so when we get here, when this refreshes, I want a question to pop up straight away. So there's a few things. Okay, so if I say, oh, we'll just shove a question in. So if I make a separate function, something called like load question, right? Because we want to load the question, then we want to actually do the check to whether the question's right and then spit out the answer. So like loading a question, that's kind of, we can separate them out. So I basically want to take a random question from here. So I go var, and I go rand q, short for rand question, of course. And what I'm basically trying to say is, no matter how long this list is, I want to have a random option between 0, 1, 2 for each of these options. So to do that, will it let me comment like this without bugging things out? 0, yeah, it will, correct. 1, you don't need to do this. This is just me for notes for people watching. Right, so this is option 0, 1, 2. Right, in terms of this here, I basically want to say, I want to get a math.floor, because I don't want any decimals with my result. And then go math.random. And I say times by the amount that I want to be random, which is 3. So I could do this. But if I ever want to update the list, I have to update that number. So I'll just go the array name, questions.length. So now it will basically just say, oh, well, however many is in the array. It'll be a random number between that. So what I want to do then is I want to, in this h1 here, question, I want to fill the value in there from something out of this. So I'll go document dot get element by ID, so I can grab that h1. So it was just called question, pretty sure, all lowercase. Paste a check. Yep, you can copy paste even. And so then we're going to say question dot inner HTML equals, now I want to say one of these, but the random one. So I'm going to say it is questions. So if I did 0, it would just chuck that one in there, right? See the 0 comment. But I wanted to be random, which is what that was, so I can just say that. And that's what that means. So it just means one of these, because it's based off that. Now, I've made this function, but I haven't told this function to run anywhere. So I'll just say, oh, at the end of the code then we'll just say function load. Oh, don't write function. You just write load. You call the function because you've already defined it. Of course, Mr. Agreement. Right, so that's what we got at that. So then we'll say load. This will throw an error. I do know this. Right, run. You'd be like, oh, it didn't do anything. Oh, okay, let's have a look why. In the console, uncore error type cannot set property of inner HTML to null line code. So it's like, what, why null? And I'm like, okay, well, let's check the code. Line 9. Well, that's all written right. Maybe I made it. No, it's written all right. The problem is, this code is called here. And in the code, it's gone to go check for something with an ID down here. But because it's run it before it's got down to here, it's like the ID is null, I can't do it. So essentially, it's when it's tried to call this, find this get element by ID, it's like can't find it. So this is why the result's null. And so I'm basically trying to push in like a null, it just breaks. So the issue is really it's down to the order. You could chuck this at the end of your page. That's one way to get around it. It's really easy. Or you can do, it's a small function that basically just says once the whole HTML document, basically once the web browser's fully finished loading, then run this. So that's what we'll do, because we actually use this when we make a canvas game. See this one here, window.onload function? That's what we're doing. It's the same thing. So we will go like this. Window dot onload equals function. Did I even write that right? I'm just going to grab it from here because how often do we? Yeah, I did write right. Oh, equals. Did I write equals? I think I wrote equals. Yes, I did. Equals. Right. Function. So in here we're defining our function, and I'm just going to say my function is that. Right. So now if I go back, refresh my page, window outline. Why is that not a function? Oh, sure. Copy. What happened? Yeah, because that changed so much. Wait. Sure. Oh, whatever. Right. Let's run this again. Ah, see, it's working. I don't know why it said it wasn't a function. That's why I was so confused. So I said, how do you get away from a zombie? Refresh. Wow. How do you hide from a zombie? How do you kill a zombie? So it is randomizing, but obviously there's only 3 options. So it could randomly land on something 6 times in a row, as you had seen. Okay, so that's working. Great. So now what we want to do is I basically want to say, okay, here's my option questions. Now I need to have like some options to answer those questions, because how do you get away from a zombie? Having someone type an answer is going to lead to a whole bunch of potential correct answers that would just type slightly different. So if your answer is like, how do you get away from a zombie? And you're like, run away at high speeds. And the answer is like, run. But they said run away at high speeds. It's like, well, it's effectively the same thing. Or like, just got to go. Meaning that. Then yeah, it was, ride the closest llama. Fine, that's not going to be right. But if the answer had run in it, but they typed something else with it, and you're like, no, I just want the 3-letter word run, and if it doesn't cite this, and you put it with you read it in all caps, and my answer was actually lowercase. So you can see it has a whole bunch of options, so issues. So this is why it's best to have a kind of a pre-prepped list of like answers. So I'm going to say answers equals, no, that one there. Right. So in here, then what I'm going to do is another array. And that's going to have, so basically, I'm going to say this is an array with an array in it, which is called a 2-dimensional array. So intense. So basically, this is my first question: is how do you get away from a zombie? So then, in this first array, I'm going to have all my options to do with that. So that way, I can say if the random queue that it lands on is 0, then the options I want to present is the options from the array 0. You'll see the magic soon. Right, so how do I get away from a zombie? You know what, I'm gonna do this because I've already pre-typed this and worked this out once because there was quite a few little things you could run into for issues. So I'll just copy them both. Make sure that all the orders and stuff line up. And I'll tidy the formatting because it's a little bit ugly to look at. Right. So that was 0, 1, cheapest, 2. Right, and this is array 1. How are we going to do this? Right, so that here is the 0th array, and then inside that is, actually this is 0, 0, which is actually written like this in, let's write it in as how it would be. Like that. And that's just 0. Exciting stuff, I know. Right. You catch my drift. If you don't, well, drifting's dangerous when you ride it. Okay, so then we've got and that is going to be, I just take that because it's going to be far faster. Right, that will be, oops. One, and that's basic. Actually, to be fair, that's options 1 to 2. Right, there we go. Things are getting there pretty. I should probably pause this and what have you, and just then show. Look, it's all done and tidied up. But it's not how I roll. Right. So there's that. So that's 2, and then I'll go these, and the fun can begin. Oops, don't want to press enter. Right, so there you go, there's your options there. So you can see that that's a heap of spacing out. It doesn't need to be spaced out that much, but for those who are unfamiliar with arrays and how the numbers are going, and then like, oh my goodness, there's arrays within arrays, just view each new array as an option, but it's an option with sub-options. So it's like, it's a bullet point with sub-bullet points. Right, okay, so we've got that. So then our question is, how do I get like just one of these to then go and be pushed into this ID text 0? Oh, and it's 0, 1, 2, 3. Oh, how do I get it to do 1, 2, 3 and then go through here and do 0, 1, 2 and then same thing. Right, so let's slow down. Right, I'm going to go and get a loop because I want to loop through three things. So var I equals 0. If I is less than, now this is where it's, if you've got just set 3 options, it's quite nice because you can just go 3, right? If you're trying to go array length, it would just take the length of how many arrays are here, not how many sub options there are. So there might be a fiddly way to try and say array random one you're on sub options, but This is why I kept it to 3, because that's just something I really could not be bothered having a headache over. Right, so we're going to rotate through three things. So we're going to rotate through basically doing this again. So I'm going to say doc get out of my, and now it's not questions, is it? It is this. But Mr. Greenwood, this is not a 0, then 1 and 2. Let's try and check we can get 1 working first. Even if it does it 3 times, it's not going to be a big deal at the end of the day. Oops. Right, so it's not going to be questions, it was answers. And it's still going to be the random queue it lands on. So this one here is the first one. That's going to be your random queue. Then effectively I want to go through all of the options. So if it landed on this last one, so that 2, we want to say our first row is 2, but then we want to go from 0 options, 0, 1, 2. Even though there's 3 entries, you get my drift. Right. So just shrink this in a wee bit. Oh, shrink with your screen. Yeah, there we go. That was a bit much. There we go. Right, so we've got the same one it's landing on. So if this landed on the last one being 2, this one would then also land on the last one 2, but now we need to go through all options, and all options is I, because I is 1, 2, 3. Well, 0, 1, 2, and then once it's not less than 3, it's equal to 3, it stops looping. Great. So let's just test that without worrying about this thing. Let's rerun this. Answers is not defined. Ah, I called it options. Ah, well, it is. To be fair, it is options. That is completely correct. No wonder I called it like that last time. Options. Right. So, options it is. How to get away from a zombie. Throw meat at it. And so we want the other options, because in there, let's have a look. What did it say? How to get away from a zombie. How to get away. So that was random Q2. And we can see throw meat at it was one of them. Because it would have shown the last option, because it would have gone 1, 2. So what we want to do is say text plus I. But I'll just take the spaces out, because then it's all in one line. So what this is going to do is going to be text 0, loop, then it's going to go the next value up, 0, it's going to be text 1, then loop, then text 2, then loop, which, as you will see here, in this one, is called text 0, 1, 2. There's method to my madness. So, here we go. Now we got distract them with fire. I can then go, no, it's this one. It's this one. How do I get away from a zombie? Distract it with loud noises. Throw meat at it. Okay, and I can hit check. Now, obviously, the check is then going to go verify. Was that correct? Now, this is where we can run into a few issues. So I basically need to write out a long, lengthy one going like, well, for question 1, how to kill a zombie, I'm going to choose cut its head off as the correct answer. And you're like, yeah, okay, cool. So it's going to be 1, which, if we look in here, value 1, okay, because we're basically taking the value out of it. So this is why I did this, because it's all lining up with the arrays and everything like that. So, am I going to loop through all things? No, this is just one of these things. It's just slightly easier to be longhand. You could do a loop if you were a bit sneaky, which is for question 0, the answer is 0. For question 1, the answer is line 1, and then for question 2, then the answer is 2. Like if that's how you set it up on purpose, then yes, you could do it in a for loop and then basically say, oh, this lines up with, and it all kind of ticks in order, then yeah, fine. But obviously if we want this to be a little bit random, in terms of its layout, not horribly predictable, or the first answer is always right. Just like, the default answer is always choose C or the longest answer. But you can see why this needs to be, 3, because if you had random lengths, then this becomes a bit of a pain. Okay, so, not to mention, how many of these do you put in? Right, so, there are ways to do that, but a lot of pain. Right, okay, so if rand q, see it's not pulling it up, because this variable was made in here. So I'm just going to declare this, I'm going to go var rand q equals 0, and then I'm just going to say here, rand q gets updated. So I'm updating, so each time this function load question gets run, it will then redo the random, but I've defined the random outside of any of the functions, so that way when I now want to use rand q, it's there, because now it knows about it outside the functions. It's just called like a public variable, and then the ones made inside a variable is called a private variable, so it's only known inside that function. If I try and call that variable outside the function, it won't know it. This function doesn't know it exists. Because this is outside of all functions can see it. Right, if rand q, the number that it lands on, say it lands on 0, equals 0, if I want to basically grab the value of what it landed on, right, so I'm going to go var answer equals document dot get element by ID. Now, how did I grab this one? I need to check if it's true first. So, here's the snack, right? I need to check through all of these lists and then say which one of you were actually ticked. And I did do this in the other one, and I did spend a bit of time searching for it, so I'll just quickly check what line did I use in the end? Checked. Right. So get element by ID dot checked. So basically, I want to loop through all of them and then say if you were checked, answer equals. So I looped through all of them and had to check through all of them manually. Well, as a loop. Right, so we know this, which is all the same stuff in here. And I'm going to say in here, var answer equals document by. Now, what did I call them in here? Option. Code. So they're called option. We know plus I. So I can get them all. So I say answer equals. Did I put this at F? I never really check. I just my brain's like, is that right? Oh yeah. Oh no. It was an if. Ha. Because this will say true. As a result, it'll return true. Thought that felt funny. Right. So let's do this. So if this is checked, So if that is true, that is checked. Your answer equals whatever option number you left, the value you landed on, to be perfectly honest. So I could just say I, if I was really lazy. The other way I can do it is go in here, and I want to grab the value that I've associated with it. So if you only had one set of questions, you weren't doing all these randomness, the way you would do it is go document dot get an element by ID, this one, dot value, and that would get you the value of it, which would be basically the number I that you're on at the time. Right. If ran Q is this, and if I say if answer is equal to, what was the correct answer for the first one? How to kill a zombie. The first one is cut its head off, so it's 1. So if the answer is equal to 1, I could say alert. Ooh, not with caps lock account. Alert. Correct. Else. Alert. Dead. Because let's face it, in an apocalypse, you're either right or you're dead. Right. And then effectively you need to do the same thing over and over again. But rather than chucking an alert, oh, we can do that with the first one. Okay. Tell you what. Yeah. Okay. So I need to get the first question of how to kill a zombie. It's oh my goodness, come on. There we go. So then if I say this option and hit check, correct. If I check this one and then say that one, it says dead. So obviously if I did it on one of the other questions and I hit check, it does nothing. Why? Because I only checked if the first option. So rather than chucking that in, well, don't want to rename. I don't know what I was doing. Okay. So basically, what I want to do here is go document dot get. It's not filling anything. That's creeping me out. All right, there we go. Get element by ID, and I want to grab the ID for the result. And yeah, by result. And there we go. Dot inner HTML equals. Let me just type the text. Correct. Other then dead. Right. Now, I also want to choose the text color in that as well. I'll do that afterwards. Let's just get this fit in. So I'll just take this whole if. Yeah, see, even if I do a for loop, I can loop the initial if, and then I just still have to, yeah, see. It still has to be in there that many times. It's really not that much shorter. Right, so if rank Q equals 1 equals 2, rank Q1, how to hide a zombie, how to hide from a zombie, out of sight, I'd say. For me personally, that's I think would be much better. Depends on your kind of zombie, to be perfectly honest. How do you get away from a zombie? Distract it with fire. Distract it with loud noises. Throw meat at it. Zombies are normally a loud noise thing, to be perfectly honest. I find. They're attracted to noise. Mind you, if once they've seen you, Throwing another human being at it. Throw brains. They like brains. Okay, so this now effectively. We saved, yeah. Let's refresh this. How do you get away from a zombie? And I go, I don't know, just strike it with fire. And it goes, dead. Nah, got it wrong. Distracted with bad noises. Let's try it again. How to kill a zombie. Cut its head off. Correct. Kill with fire. Dead. Right, okay. Let's try another one. How do you hide from a zombie? Cover your human smell. Dead. Out of sight. Check. Correct. No, I want to go back to that one anyway. Dead. Okay. And let's try that other question. How to kill a zombie? No. How to get away from it? Distract it with fire. Check. Throw meat at it. Check. Okay. Throw meat at it. Is correct. I said throw meat at it. What is it? That's right. Sorry. Which question was that? How to get away from a zombie? Two should be one. Right. Okay. So there you go. So that does that. Now, what I would like to do is make this text red when you're dead and green when you're good. So I can default it to a color, but I might as well just change them both in here. So I would say this first, and I would say style dot h2. No, what style am I doing? Because I've already got it by result. Style, what am I styling? Color equals green, duplicate, red. Let's just check that's correct. So first question is how to kill a zombie. Right. Come on, how to kill a zombie. Smash its body with something. Dead. Cut its head off. Correct. There we go. So yeah, we're pretty done. We're pretty done. Copy. Okay, so correct screen. Screen. Paper's dead. Right. There you go. So there you go. There you got your fun. You can stylize your buttons. You can space things out and what have you. That is one thing I wanted to do. Is that once you do hit check, I want it to basically give you an answer. And if it was correct, then refresh and show another question, essentially. If it was wrong, then no. I guess you could just say, well, if you're wrong, it just says dead, and then do that. You could track the correct answers and display them and all that kind of jazz as well. But if you want to do that, that's something for you to push yourself on and tinker with. But in terms of getting the page load, that one there is definitely one it's not hard. So we'll just say basically once the question's been asked, I'll say set interval and no, it's not interval. It's timeout, I think. Hold on. What did I do in the last one? Because this thing, you spend that much time looking for things. There we go. So I put it in the if correct part. I'd put it in. That way, it basically waits 3 seconds and then reloads the page. Where I'm just going to say, because I'm lazy, doesn't matter if you answer right or wrong, I am just going to get it to go again. Yep. So it's saying set a timeout. So basically it waits until, and it will wait 3 seconds or 4 seconds, you get the idea, to run a function which you've just defined the function. So if I want to space this out a bit more, so I'm saying I'm running an if function bracket inside the brackets there, and so that bracket there to there. Hold on. There we go. So start bracket, end bracket, function without a name because we're defining it inside something. Window.location href. We're going to load it, so that's what we're doing. If I had a predefined function that had that information in it, then I would just call the function name of like, whatever the function's called, which could be called load question. Then effectively it'll wait 3 seconds to execute that code, right? So if I refresh it now and I say, how do you hide from a zombie? I don't know, pretend to be a zombie. Dead. 2, 3, and it should refresh and reload the page. Now sometimes you might get the same question again, but yeah, it just depends how you want to do it. But yes, if you want it to be only when correct, you would then effectively just chuck that. Sorry, excuse me, inside the if correct section, not in the else. Right, there you go. So that's it, all done. How to do your multi-question quiz with a range of questions in here. So, I mean, obviously this question sheet can be as long as you want, but the key to making it less tricky, this can be as many options as you want. The options you have to choose between should always be the same amount, because obviously then the labels here are all the same amount. So yeah, there you go.